Man, episode 11 of Irina the Vampire Cosmonaut really did leave it in a bad spot. It's just like they're teasing so many bad things, and I don't like it. I'm just kind of afraid of what direction my mind is going at right now. But yeah, I just got done with episode 11 of Irina the Vampire Cosmonaut, and yeah, kind of opens up with, it seemed like the whole situation with the flight itself, with sending Lev, was kind of brushed over, but it opens up with this kind of brief moment where Lev decides to, he has to use the restroom, and everybody thinks something's wrong, but he's like, oh, I just have to go to, use the restroom. And I have to say, it's kind of a similar situation with Rosa. I don't really feel like this writer likes to, I guess, resolve things in a complicated way, because it has Mikhail confront Lev and say, oh, well, I was kind of concerned, and now I kind of realize now that you were the good pick because you can put smiles on people, because you said you had to use the restroom, and so everybody smiled, and so I acknowledge you now. It's like, this writer really doesn't want to fight with their characters. It just seems like, okay, well, I'm fine now, we're good, we're solid, go on up into space. I don't know. It was fine. Like, it technically acknowledges what everybody else seen in Lev, and like I said, this is where Lev goes up into space, and it pretty much brushed over it. He makes it up there. Everything's going fine. They do a broadcast out into the world. Everybody's aware at this point that the first man in space went there. They decided to wait until he actually successfully made it before they said anything. But it was really this like, there's two scenes in here that are absolutely they're linked. There's two aspects of this episode that was just so good. And it was the fact that when Lev gets up there, instead of describing things the way that he sees it, he immediately starts to describe everything the way that Irina did it. And I'm really happy that Anya picked up on it, and Anya really kind of lets Irina know, because Irina starts to doubt Lev. Like, she starts to think, well, why is Lev using my words? Is it because I'm a vampire? Why? I was kind of getting scared, because it was almost playing it out as if Irina was going to be angry that Lev did this, that Lev took her words, that Lev betrayed her and decided to mimic her and gain praise. Because everybody's screaming. They're all praising the fact that Lev is a first person to space. And yet here's Irina, who essentially is the reason why they made it, the reason why they were successful. And that's how Anya puts it. We both know that you're the reason why he's there. And because of the things that you went through, this was possible. And so Lev, by doing that, is trying to let people know the words that you couldn't give them. And I thought it was, like I said, so good. Like, the moment that he starts saying that stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. He's immortalizing her words. And there's a hope that down the road, when everything is not so polarizing, that one day it could be brought to people's attention that Irina was the one that did it. Which I think is getting into my theories about what's going to happen in the next episode, but yeah, in the moment that she, like, looks out the window, sees everybody cheering, I almost thought that, like, the production values went down. I completely forgot that, yeah, well, technically she's a vampire, so she's looking out in the sunlight. It's not good. And it kind of confirmed when she went up to the roof and she's running out there. It's like everything is just completely bleached in her vision. And yeah, I was like, oh no, she's getting the wrong impression. This sucks. This sucks so bad. But no, like I said, technically Anya coming in there and pretty much puts it, this is what he's doing. We know what you did. And yeah, her pretty much breaking down over this whole situation. It's like, it was so depressing. Like, that whole scene with everything just bleached out, Irina panicking and thinking that he betrayed him, and that moment of realization that you did good, you're the reason why this was successful, was heartbreaking. And then to follow that whole thing up with Lev pretty much being depressed all this time afterwards, that he can no longer see Irina and he wants to see Irina. It was just a very sad episode. And this is where everything kind of gets, it's really hard to tell what is going on with this later part of the episode, because you have Lev, he's depressed that, he can't see Irina. She's the only reason that he was able to go up there. He's afraid, obviously, that something will happen to her because everything's successful now. They no longer need her technically at this point, because they now have their first human success. They now have somebody who has firsthand experience that's not a vampire. It's a big question mark for her. And even with that, everybody's kind of cheering around him, and he's having to be this, this post person, and he's seeing things like the fact that the chief's not recognized. Obviously, they're not going to recognize Irina. He's the only one. He's the central focus, and even though all these people were the reason why he did it. And then, yes, Everybody starts talking in the background about things they want to do. Obviously, we had Harlova show up, and she's talking about how he needs to focus, he needs to do all this stuff, and she's like, well, you remember what I said about wanting somebody, what I wanted in a person that would do that? And he's like, yeah, somebody that would cause a revolution. And it's weird because she's mocking him for liking Irina and not seeing Irina as an object, but at the same time she's wanting to push him to do this. So I almost felt like she was mocking him about Irina to push him to talk about Irina. Like, oh, you're still talking about the object thing. You're supposed to see it as an object. Well, now I want you to do a revolution. It almost feels like she's pushing him to do that. And then on top of that, having Gurgiv, he's over here talking about how the chief is trying to push him to something. I wasn't sure if she was talking about specifically the chief as in Korovin, because Korovin said that he was going to do whatever he could to help Lev with Irina, and he says something to the effect of, that's not so much a plea, but a threat, almost as if he's trying to force them to give up Irina. And then you have this room full of people that are saying something's going to go down the next day, which it seems to be implying when they do this big speech. It's just everything... Nothing's looking right. I just don't think this whole speech is going to go well. Like, there's a few things playing in my head that Lev is going to go up on that stage and talk about something, and the revolution they're trying to push is that they're going to reveal that Irina was involved before him, and that technically Irina was the first, or that somebody's going to use it as an opportunity to, yes, claim that she was a part of it, but then dispose of her immediately because she is this test subject. I don't see anything going well here. Also, possibly them seeing that Lev is going to possibly say something to use Irina as leverage to force him to say what he needs to say. My mind's going everywhere. And I know that this next episode is going to be the propaganda at its worst. Like, I think everything so far with the series is coming to this one point where the propaganda is going to be at its worst. You're going to have Lev wanting to essentially just want to be with Irina. I see Lev being on that stage as he's going to do everything he can to bring awareness to what Irina did. That's first and foremost. Lev's focus on that stage will be to give recognition to Irina. Harlova, on the other hand, just wants him to possibly do that just to shake things up. I kind of think it's going to end positively. I don't see the series ending with a bad note. Like, I don't see, them taking Irina out there and executing her or anything like that. I don't see this ending in any way besides just a moral struggle for the nation itself before an embrace and an acceptance. Not an acceptance for what vampires are in this world, but technically just an acceptance for what Lev wants. Maybe a little bit of a whisper of Irina being involved, but I think still a cover-up by them to state that it wasn't Irina. But on the other hand, I do see that being that acceptance that Irina was involved and the public knowing about it being the big final message. Like, I don't think that they would go through this long of a story not to have some sort of recognition for what Irina did. Because I think that's besides Irina and Lev being allowed to be together, the acknowledgement of Irina so that she doesn't have to be disposed, but the message of accepting the vampires and their involvement with this whole situation, I think is going to be the big final note for the world itself. So you have character development, you have allowance of the love, and then you have world build. But anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 11 of Irina the Vampire Cosmonaut. We'll definitely be here next week for the finale. Hopefully it's a really awesome finale. But I hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know about the episodes. Subscribe if you haven't already, share this video if you can, support us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate everybody that does. Take care.